Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Happy New Year. Very nice to see you all here with me on this rather grey afternoon here in England, but it's very, very nice to have you with me. So, got a busy afternoon. I hope that you're ready. We're going to be looking at some writing. We're going to be looking at a quite specific part of writing as well. Let me show you 1 second. I'm going to be a technical wizard, hopefully. Let's find out. 1 second. Here we go. Okay. So we are going to be looking at introductions. Such an important part of the IELTS writing. We're going to be looking quite specifically at writings for part 2. Whilst there is an element in part 1 of your writing needing to be introduced, it's much more important in part 2 that you are able to give very good first impression and getting your writing off to a really very impressive start. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to explain to you as well why it is so important that your introductions are excellent. I'm going to share something with you now which goes into some detail about how your writings are marked. This is a really useful document. If you are if you're actually taking the IELTS, if you're taking the academic, or if you're taking the general training, I really recommend that you get to know these documents very well. These are the writing marking schemes. So with the IELTS, it's actually very strict how you're marked. Examiners basically have to say why they have given you the marks that they have. This is basically to make sure that everybody around the world, because obviously the IELTS is taken hello Siam, because the IELTS is taken everywhere, from Australia to Austria, from Canada to Kathmandu. We need to make sure that all of the candidates are being marked fairly. And they are very, very strict with the examiners about making sure that everyone is doing exactly the same thing. So this is a really good document, actually. 1 second. For you to get familiar with. Okay, let me show you. Here we go. Okay. So this is a really, really useful document for you to get very, very used to. Okay, so we're focusing here. Let's be positive. Let's make this nice and big for you. Okay, we're focusing here on the upper end of the scores. So this is 6 upwards. Okay, so you can see we have from the top 9, 8, 7, and 6. And you can see as well, we have 4 areas here: task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, and grammatical range and accuracy. Lovely. Okay, so I often find with students actually that the lexical resource is another word for vocabulary. I mean, you can see here how many times vocabulary is featured. So this is basically, are you using a very broad range of words? Are you using words that are perhaps lesser known and unusual? And of course, are you using them correctly? It always helps. Grammatical range and accuracy, well, that kind of explains itself, doesn't it? So this is, again, are you using a broad range of different grammatical structures, complex structures, simple structures, and are you using them well? So 50% of your mark in the writing will be focusing on these 2 areas here. So that leaves another 50%, these two. And students are sometimes a little bit less sure of what this actually means. So task achievement basically is, have you recognized what the task is? Have you understood it? And have you answered what you have been asked to do? Okay, so you need to make it very clear right from the very first sentence that you write that you have recognized and you have understood and you know what you have been asked to do. Now, this one here is the 25% that's sometimes a little bit of a mystery, actually. This is coherence and cohesion. Now, to be honest with you, quite a lot of teachers don't really know what this means. They just know it's 25%. And if you ask them, they will say it's to make sure that your writing is organized. Now, that's partly true. But it's not just about paragraphing, and it's not just about how you use an introduction and a conclusion. It's about how things are arranged, how they are sequenced, how everything follows on from each other. And this is focusing on something which is moving down your writing, so from start to bottom, but also does everything link backwards as well? Now, it doesn't mean you have to write backwards, but it means there needs to be a very clear flow from the introduction to the main body of the essay to the conclusion, and that should follow backwards as well. Don't worry, I'll explain that later in the class, okay? So this is worth the same amount. This 25% is worth the same as your grammar. It's also worth the same as the vocabulary. So this is something that you absolutely cannot forget about. It's so important that your writing is sequenced and organized, and that does need to be right from the start as well. Okay, good stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to look very specifically at how to write really well put together introductions, okay? Because they are very, very important, because they will touch on all of those 4 areas that we've just looked at, okay? So if you don't have a really good introduction, there is no way that you're going to be able to achieve the task as highly as you could. And also with grammatical accuracy and vocabulary, you need to show that right from the start, okay? It's like a first impression. But also, your writing, to get a good coherence mark, you need to set out in your introduction what you are going to write, so the examiners can check that you have done what you were saying that you were going to do. Okay, so let's have a look at the question. Always a good place to start. Okay. So let's have a look here. One moment. Okay. So, all right, I'm actually going to make this bigger because the writing is not so big. Okay, so let's start, rather depressingly, let's start by being, there we go. Let's start by being a bit negative. Let's think about things that students do, which they shouldn't do, and hopefully after this, you won't do. Okay. So the first issue that we have with students is this: talking too generally about the topic. So lots of essays just start off with very broad statements. And by broad, I mean not focusing on the question itself, but focusing on the topic that the question is asking you about. So we'll look at an example in a moment. But a lot of essays start off with nowadays. Examiners really hate nowadays. Or in modern life. That doesn't show when you're using expressions like that. It doesn't show that you have read and understood the question and you know exactly what you're writing about. It's very general. And what happens as well is that this is followed by very general information about the topic. Now, this is really important here, going crazy with the colors, excuse me. It's really not going to have a positive effect on the examiner at all, okay? It's not going to make them think that you are in control and that you know what you're supposed to be doing. Really important that you remember you're supposed to answer the question and not just write something generally about the topic the question is connected to. Now, part 2 here of a common problem. We will explain clearly what a thesis statement is. So if you think, I haven't seen this word before, don't worry. Now, not including a thesis statement. A thesis statement, no pressure, is the most important sentence in the essay. It's good to know, isn't it? Not including one, it will lose you marks in all sorts of different ways, actually. We'll look at that in a second. But it's very, very important that you state what your essay is going to be about in the introduction. Now, the third problem, we're only looking at 3, is not outlining what you're going to do. Now, if you don't tell the examiner very clearly what your essay is going to be about, well, first of all, there's this problem, okay? The examiner doesn't know if you have understood the question, okay? If you're not really specific with what is going to be in your essay, they have no idea if you have understood what you have been asked to do, and makes them feel not very confident in you. The second problem, you haven't said what you're going to write about in the rest of your essay, and that looks like you haven't planned. These are 2 things that are not going to make the examiner feel very positively about your writing, and this is something it's very difficult to repair after it goes wrong at the start. So, examiner doesn't know if you've understood what you've been asked to do. That's really not good. And they don't know if you've prepared what you're going to write about in the rest of your essay. Similarly, really not good. Good news is that these 3 issues are very easily fixed. Okay, so these are 3 issues, but we have 3 proactive ways of sorting these out. Okay, so let's have a look here. I'm going to make this super big. So we have got a sample question here. There's a good deal of evidence that increasing car use is contributing to global warming and having other undesirable effects on people's health and well-being. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? Great. So this is all very typical IELTS stuff. Global warming, health, well-being, and you're being asked, to what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? There we go. Lovely. Now, we have got here 2 example introductions. Okay, a number 1, number 2. Let's have a look at number 1. Nowadays, cars are a very popular way of getting around. Day by day, many more people drive cars around, but others feel that they cause global warming. Global warming is one of the most serious issues in modern life. They also affect people's health and well-being, which is also a serious issue. Okay. Example introduction 2. Rising global temperatures and human health and fitness issues are often viewed as being caused by the expanding use of automobiles. This essay agrees that increasing use of motor vehicles is contributing to rising global temperatures and certain health issues. Firstly, this essay will discuss the production of greenhouse gases by vehicles. And secondly, it will discuss other toxic chemicals released by internal combustion engines. Okay. So, one of these is much more likely to have a really positive effect on the examiner. And that is example introduction 2. Example introduction 1 doesn't really pay attention to the question. What the student's done, which is what a lot of students do, is just looked at the question and thought, global warming, cars. Okay, I'm just going to write something about global warming being serious. People drive more cars. It doesn't really get in and answer the question. Example introduction 2 will really make the examiner feel very confident in what is being written here and what's going to be written further in the essay. Okay. So the reason why is that it is structured in 3 clear ways. Okay. They've done these 3 things here. They have, first of all, paraphrased the question. Number 2 is this expression again. They have provided a thesis statement, and we will explain that in a moment. And excellent, they have provided an outline statement as well. Okay, these are the 3 things that an opinion essay really should include in its introduction. It's very, very important. All right. So, paraphrasing. You've probably seen this before. You might not have seen the exact use of it as it is here, but it's something you will probably be familiar with. You've definitely seen it before today. Just might not have been aware that you were looking at it. So paraphrasing is brilliant because it basically means that you are stating the question again. So it really reinforces the meaning to you, but it uses different words that have the same meaning. It's very clever. So we use synonyms, okay? So we use words which have similar meanings. And you can change the order of the sentences as well. You don't have to, but you can. So let's have a look back at the question again here. There's a good deal of evidence that increasing car use is contributing to global warming and having other undesirable effects on people's health and well-being. There is a lot of information there, and it's specific information as well. Now, just going to remove the color here. Okay, so the paraphrase is the first sentence of the introduction that we thought was very good. It reads, rising global temperatures and human health and fitness issues are often being viewed as being caused by the expanding use of automobiles. Okay, so first of all, the meaning matches brilliantly, but the words used are different. So synonyms, that's words which have a similar meaning, are as follows. So in the question, they've used increasing. And in the first sentence of the introduction, they have changed that to expanding. In the question, they have used car use. And in the paraphrase, use of automobiles. In the question, we've got global warming. In the introduction here, rising global temperatures. And the last one, people's health and well-being, human health and fitness. Okay. So this is a model. Okay, this is perfect. This is not going to be, not everyone's going to be able to write this. If you did this in an exam, an examiner would think it was marvelous and wonderful. But it doesn't matter if you can't use synonyms for everything. Probably wouldn't be possible. But you need to use synonyms for some things. Okay? You need to show that you have flexibility of language. What that means is that you are able to recognize and understand a word, and you are able to use a different word to express the same meaning. Okay. Now, you can change the order. This is called flipping. Okay. So you can see that they've moved the order of the words around slightly. You can do this. It's impressive, but it's not terribly important. Don't worry if you can't do this. It's if it's going to confuse you more than help you, I'd recommend that you don't do it. But it's very important that you do remember to change the vocabulary. All right. Now, thesis statement is what we've been talking about. And I've promised that I would explain what it means. Well, here it is. Here's the explanation. In red, oh, very important. This is the most important sentence in your essay. The main idea, and often described as how you feel about the whole issue in one sentence. And why it's so important is it tells the examiner that you've understood the question and will lead to a clear and coherent essay. So if you think back to when we were looking at the marking guidelines, 25% of your mark is to do with cohesion and coherence. And you need to demonstrate, you need to make it very clear that you're writing an essay which contains cohesion and is coherent. So the first sentence is a paraphrase. That's the rephrasing of the question. Great stuff. So the second sentence looks like this. This essay agrees that increasing use of motor vehicles is contributing to rising global temperatures and certain health issues. It tells the examiner what the student is going to write about. These are only 4 words. They're really important because it expresses what you feel and it indicates what your essay is going to be about. So this essay agrees that. Now, obviously, there are different types of essays that you can be asked to write. So you're going to have to make sure that you don't write for every essay, this essay agrees that, because it might not be correct for the type of essay you've been asked to write. But the important thing is that you summarize your opinion and what you're going to say in one sentence. Because the examiner, as they read on through your essay, will look back to this sentence, this statement, and check that what you have written in the main part of your essay matches this. If it matches this, then it's great. It means that it is a coherent essay. If it doesn't match, not great, because it means that the whole piece is not following on from your introduction. You're not keeping your promise. You're not saying what you are going to do at the start. This is an interesting little expression as well. Micro keywords. So it really focuses, it really gets to what you've been asked to write about here. Global warming, or rising global temperatures, and health issues as well. It shows that you've paid attention. Okay. So this is relevant to the essay that we've been asked about here. This is an opinion essay. So depending on your point of view, you could say this essay agrees that, or you could say this essay disagrees that. It depends on what your viewpoint is, the statement that you've been asked to write about. If you have an essay which is a cause and solution essay, you could start your thesis statements with the main cause of this issue is. If you're asked to write about advantages and disadvantages, you could write something like this. The principal advantage is, and the main disadvantage is. Now, if it's a discussion essay, with a lot of IELTS exam questions are at the moment, have been for the past few years actually, you need to state both points of view clearly. All right, good stuff. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do something a bit different. We are going to move to Zoom. Great, what? Yeah, we're going to move to Zoom. There was a link to the Zoom meeting that we're going to be going into for the next 30 minutes. It's going to be with me. It's going to be a continuation of what we're doing. So it's going to be the next part of the class. But what's really great about it is it gives you a chance to interact with me as well, which is very exciting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over there now. 1 second. I am just going to post for you in case you didn't get it for some reason in from Facebook. I am going to, one moment, I'm just going to post the Zoom link here. So great. This is the link. Just putting it in the chat box here. I'll see you there. See you in a bit. I'll be waiting.